Beautiful people, it's been a long time, but as I promised you in the last episode, we have so many interesting topics for you. Today, I'm so glad I'm privileged for having Miss Kym Hamer with us. Today, we'll be talking about professionalism, but before that, Miss Kym, mic is yours to introduce yourself. How it's beautiful to meet you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Musab. It's an absolute delight to be here, and I hope that your listeners get lots of useful information. So my name's Kym Hamer. I am based in London in the UK, but I'm an Australian. So I moved across to London almost 20 years ago. I work in the area of visibility and personal branding, and I'm an entrepreneur.
Okay. Again, thank you so much for accepting my invitation to have a full conversation with me and share your knowledge with our audience. Thank you so much. So we used to define the concept, we were talking about it. So what does professionalism mean exactly?
I think this is a really interesting subject. I noticed that on your podcast episode artwork, we talk about professionalism is not the job you do; it's how you do the job, and I think that's absolutely true. So, professionalism. In preparation for this, what I did was actually go and actually have a look up some definitions of what a profession is. I thought that might be a good place for us to start. So when I first looked, it's a paid occupation was the first definition. And then there was the Professional Standards Council that defined a profession as an indicator of trust and expertise, a disciplined group of individuals who adhere to ethical standards. And then I looked up the Oxford English Dictionary, an occupation in which a professed knowledge of some subject, field, or science is applied. So there's lots of things in there, isn't it? But I think what stands out for me is that one, there's some expertise, and two, that it's really about setting standards and trust. About what you do and what others like you do. The thing to say is that in being professional, we can think of ourselves as professional, but actually professional exists in the world of other people. It's about our opinion of us. And in thinking about professionalism, what we need to be thinking about is how we show up to other people. What does that look like to others?
So, as you said, professionalism about how you do your job and how you behave, how you come across as interact with other people.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, professionalism includes personal qualities and behaviors. Is it true?
I think it does. I think that is true. But I think professionalism, it starts with how you think, but it shows up in how you behave. So if you think in a certain way and that leads to certain behavior in your business or your profession, it's the behavior that means you're professional or otherwise. Just thinking professionally doesn't make you professional. It has to come out in what you do and what you say and what other people see about you.
Okay, great. So the next stage of our conversation I want to jump into, how can we behave as professionals?
Oh, it's a great question. I think particularly in this world of entrepreneurs, I come across this a lot because sometimes when you work as an entrepreneur, it's not clear, either what your profession is or how you're coming across as professional, because you don't work with others in your profession, so you don't have a set of standards that are imposed by other people. So I think that's the first thing to think about. Even if you're in a company, acting professionally is about are you a good representative of what you do? I think that's a great way of thinking about it, whether you're working in a company, whether you're a truck driver, whether you're the accountant, whether you're the business coach. Are you a good example of your profession? And, is what you're doing good for the reputation of your profession? I think is a really great place to start.
Okay. So let's keep our conversation in workplace. What's the sign of professionalism in workplace?
Sure. So in the workplace, I think you work in different, there's all sorts of different professions, you could say, in the workplace. So you could think about it as, I'm in the accounting profession, I'm in the marketing profession, and there might be certain ethical standards of behavior that are applied to those professions. But more often than not, most of us don't have some sort of industry standard, and it's up to us to be setting the standard inside our work or inside the organization we work for. So I think some things to think about are really about being consistent in your behavior and listening. And I think the other thing is actually doing what you say and delivering when you say you're going to deliver. I think that really adds to not just your professionalism, but your personal credibility and your personal brand.
Okay. How can we define someone as a professional?
Oh, that's a tricky question, isn't it? so it's a great question, because
have so many questions like this.
Yeah, I'll bet you do. I think one of the things is, how do you define a professional? Is the man that works for the company that collects my rubbish every week? He a professional? By definition, he is, because it's a paid occupation. He has some knowledge of the subject. He comes, knows how to collect my rubbish and to put it in the right place. And what he does has an impact on not just his own reputation, but the reputation of his company. So if he does a bad job, then I think badly of him, and I think badly of his company. So I think it's a really interesting question about what is a professional. I think we should all aspire to be professional in whatever we do.
Okay. So professionalism doesn't depend on the job title, as you said.
No, I don't think it does at all. I think we can all take on professional behavior in anything.
Okay, great. Why professionalism is important?
Okay, so one of the things about being professional is about your own reputation and your company's reputation. So you need to take care of that. But what you also need to do is take care of, it might be your clients if you're in a sales role. It might be your auditors if you're in an accounting role. So it's also about how you behave with others. And that can be different depending on the kind of organization you work for. I'm going back to the man who collects my rubbish in the street. I don't expect him to turn up in a suit, but I do expect him to turn up in something that's branded with a company, that he looks neat and tidy. So there's something about understanding what your environment expects of you. Don't turn up to a meeting with a client in jeans if your client potentially is interested in ties and suits and all of that sort of thing. Sometimes, we can adapt a little bit as we get to know clients or others in our business. But, it's about, this is the look and feel and reputation of the business I'm in. So I need to be a good example of this. And that might mean, dressing in a particular way to a degree. It's also about, there's something about understanding the culture of where you work and thinking about, well, how do things get done around here, and how do I navigate that in a professional way, that can be quite difficult when you start with a company, and after a while you get very used to the way things work. But part of your professionalism in the company might be, how do we do things around here? It might also be setting a new standard. So you might come into a company, particularly if you're a manager, and you think, well, I think we could lift the standards of professional behaviour. You might see that, okay, I'd like us to answer the phone differently. I'd like us to make sure we deliver our work on time. I'd like us to have a certain standard of presentation. So you can also set a new standard of professionalism, as well as working out in your company and in your work how things get done.
Okay, so I asked you about how can I define someone as a professional. So is a professionalism has a science, and if yes, what's the science of it?
Oh, unfortunately, I don't think they have a sign, Musab. That would be really easy, wouldn't it, for me to answer? Yes, they have a sign. These are the examples. I think so. I think if we're looking at professional behaviour, I think if you were asking yourself, is that person professional, you'd probably ask yourself a number of things. So I think something about being professional is, are you reliable? Do you deliver what you say? Are you your word? Do you keep your promises? I think the second thing is that do you build trust with me in the right way? So I'm a business coach, and depending on my client, some clients talk about very personal things with me. Other clients I coach for business. So it's about setting up the right relationship, building the right bridge between you and the other person that says, okay, this is a professional relationship. You don't have a professional relationship with your friends. You have a different relationship. With a professional relationship, I think it's also important to understand where the boundaries are. So again, you don't behave the same way when in your profession or in your work as you do with your friends or your family. So thinking about, well, what are the boundaries? What are the things that I would say do with my friends and family that I wouldn't do in my work? So just thinking about some of those questions, I think can help us define who we are as professionals, but it can also help others kind of look and say, okay, I like that they don't wear a suit. That might be something that you value, in a business or as a client. But I like the fact that they always come prepared to my meetings. That tells me that they're a professional. They always deliver what I ask them to. I think delivery is a big piece of it too, Musab. Not delivering what you say you will deliver in a, I keep saying professional way, in a, it might be neat and clear and spell checked, if it's a document. If you don't deliver that, that can undermine your professionalism without you even knowing it.
Okay, so great. So how can I control myself or my business to be a professional or represent my business in a professional way?
Yes, and this is all about, I think we always need to start with ourselves and be an example of the behaviour we want to see. And then I think your question's a good one. How do we encourage others to take that on as well? So sometimes if you're already a manager and you have a team, that can sometimes be a little easier in some companies because you have some authority. But if you're not behaving the way you expect others to behave, they're not going to follow you. So the first thing is to be an example. And the second thing is I think we can bring sort of like a coaching kind of mentality to how encouraging others, because it may be new behavior for them. They may not see it the same way you do. So sometimes it's about sort of identifying or calling out when behavior isn't professional and saying, perhaps we could try it this way, or what would our client think of that? A third thing I've seen done quite a lot, some organisations as part of their review process, they get you to rate yourself on your performance, and they get others to rate you. It's sometimes called a 360. You get others' views of you, and that can be really enlightening, and that can be a really interesting part of the review process. Not all organisations do it, but maybe it's something we can take on for ourselves as well, asking people who we believe will be honest with us, how they see us, and whether there are things we could do to improve how we show up, how we look more professional. Mentors are great for that, and so are potentially peers in your business.
Okay, great. So how clear boundaries in workplace play a big role in building professional relationships?
That is another great question. Everyone has different boundaries and different styles, but we have to be authentic to ourselves, but at the same time respectful that others have boundaries as well. So there are really simple, boundaries, I think. Like, I'm not saying everybody, swears with their friends, but if you swear when you're with your family and friends, don't do it at work. Like, that's a really easy one. I think sometimes the blend between being friendly and being your friend can be quite a tough one to navigate, because we can all be really friendly at work, but that doesn't necessarily mean I have the same relationship with my friends. So it's defining how much of yourself you want to share. I think starting out with perhaps less personal information, if you're just going into a new workplace or client or something like that, I think it's good to listen more and see how people respond to you. And I think the other thing is also setting boundaries for other people and how they behave with you. So in different cultures, so I've worked all over the world, and when you work with Brazilians, they hug you. That's just what they do. I go to the USA and, they shake my hand. So it's also about being aware of what the culture is around you. I hug my friends all the time, but I wouldn't hug my client or my boss or things like that. So we've got to find that balance between what we feel comfortable with. If you don't feel comfortable hugging, your co-workers, then, you might have to set some boundaries around that. So it's important for us to set some boundaries for others, but also for us to understand where others' boundaries are, so that we can build a really constructive relationship between us. And I think that's what creates that space for professional behavior.
Okay, great. So guys, if you want option a good life without difficulties, we must do your work and behave and interact with other in professional image. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great. Every weekend we have a super guest. Today our guest was Kym Hamer. Can't be more happy, and I can't thank you enough for your priceless time. But before we over our conversation, let us know about what you have been up lately, and tell us about your current program, Build Brand You.
Great.
With Build Brand You.
Yeah, and thank you for all of your support all across social media, Musab. I see you popping up everywhere, so I'm glad that you like building Brand You. So I have a number of things going on at the moment. I work with some organisations, and I'm working with a couple of them in Barbados at the moment. So I get to travel, which is quite lovely. But the big one at the moment is the podcast. So the Building Brand You podcast. We're fellow podcasters. Musab. So we're just week is the final episode of season 2. You'll find
great.
Building Brand New on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all of the usual podcast platforms. Just pop in Building Brand New. We will launch season 3 on the 11th of October. So we are already working on that. So it's really exciting. I love the opportunity to both interview guests and to offer little sound bites and tips. And so in the next month, I will launch my first online course. So if you are interested in sort of finding out more about all of that, my details, I think, will be in the show notes. Musab has all those. But also we have a group on Facebook called Building Brand New. And if you join that group, that's where we update when the podcast will go live, if there's any events, if there's any courses coming up. And I also post all sorts of different tips through the week for you to think about outside the podcast and the course and all of that sort of thing. So I'm quite active on social media. And if you want to reach out on any of those spaces, I would love to hear from you. Just let me know that you heard me here on Weekend Talk with Musab. I'd love to chat further with you and hear what things you'd like solved in building your professionalism and your personal brand.
Good luck.
October. Yes, thank you.
Excited.
Oh, yeah. I've already started recording, Musab, so.
I'm so excited. People, thank you so much for taking time listening for this episode. As usual, we have so many interesting topics for you. Stay safe and stay close. Bye-bye.